I'd like to start my speech with a paraphrased quote from Jordan Peterson from his book Maps of Meaning. And he says, "Life is best characterized as perpetual suffering, marked with brief respites that, if we're lucky, fill us with the psychological necessities to endure the continuance of life's inexorable vicissitudes." So as dismal as this quote may seem, there is a disturbing trend which seems to lend credence to this perspective. The American Psychological Association has cited 64% increase in the number of Americans who currently are taking some form of antidepressant, and that is since the year 1999. As well, from the Center for Disease Control, we have a stat that says that 129 suicides on average occur every day. That coincides with 130 Americans who die every day from opioid overdoses. So this quote and these statistics seem to tell us what we intuitively already understand, that life is difficult, life is struggle. From my earliest memories of adolescence to adulthood, I struggled to find purpose or meaning to my life. I was aimless and without direction, and as a consequence, I found myself indecisive in my decisions, whether in regards to professional or academic pursuits. So as a result of not having this purpose, I stayed off many significant life events. I got married later, and I held off having children. So without direction, I really felt like a boat adrift at sea, with neither sail or wind to propel me. Luckily, however, I did not reach the depths of hopelessness that rendered me utterly ineffectual. So what happened was my yearning to find meaning ironically became a purpose unto itself. In my purpose for finding meaning, I came across a number of important formative thinkers, and ultimately provided me with substantive advice. One such individual was Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl was a world-renowned psychiatrist in the early half of the 20th century. His book, Man's Search for Meaning, made tremendous strides in the field of psychology, and even introduced a new form of psychotherapy. But the uniqueness of this book was its origination. Viktor Frankl had been a prisoner under Hitler's Germany and had been incarcerated in such infamous camps such as Dachau and even Auschwitz. Under those strict regimes, where cruelty and deprivation were commonplace, Dr. Frankl's clinical training provided him with a unique insight into observing the condition of man's psyche under the most extreme and stressful conditions. So during Frankl's time, he observed and distinguished two types of prisoners in camp life. The first were those whose basic instincts to survive had succumbed to the hopelessness and the pressures of camp life. And they gave up when they got sick or when they got beat or whatever ailments. Eventually they became comatose and they died shortly thereafter. The second type of prisoner was those who found strength in the simple things. Family, friends, faith, and even things that seemed trivial, such as getting new shoes that were worn, or getting an extra piece of morsel of food from a trade with another prisoner. So Frankl found that those who focused on external duties and obligations ended up coping better in camp. And he summed it up in this quote that he'd often have with camp members. Most of them would say, "I don't expect anything from life anymore," which would characterize their lack of meaning and purpose. But what he did was he posed another question. He says, "What about life's expectations for you?" So particular significant observation came when Frankl's recount of the bout he had with typhus while imprisoned. He talks of purposefully leaving notes and unfinished parts of his book in order to provide him with the incentive to fight and to endure the ravages of this disease. Frankl discovered that by providing his psyche with purpose, the aim to finish his book, his will was strengthened sufficient to overcome a lot of the physical travails of his sickness, as well as camp life. Another individual who I look to, and a quote that kind of embodies the total theme of this speech, is from Friedrich Nietzsche. And he says, "He who finds a why can endure anyhow." And that encapsulates the fundamental importance of establishing meaning prior to any undertaking. It means giving purpose, and purpose sustains meaning. So the question arose, how do we find our why? And there's a significant quote in Jordan Peterson's Massive Meaning book. And he says, in order to find a meaningful direction to our lives, we must first disperse the chaos that often clouds it. And we do it through acquiring discipline. And discipline, Jordan describes, is simply the imposition of order into that chaos that clouds our vision. In order to develop discipline, we must be willing to adopt responsibilities. Responsibilities akin to taking on uncomfortable or difficult experiences. These difficult experiences can expose our psyche to changes that inevitably lead us to growing and to finding potentialities within us. Neuroscience, in fact, has shown that distinct physiological changes within the brain occur when this happens. New neural pathways develop. These neural pathways imply the foundations for new potentialities, both in habit and abilities. So as we seek for meaning through discipline and the taking on of responsibility, we literally mold our minds and bodies towards dormant potentials within us, opening ourselves to purpose and meaningful endeavors that were once impossible to perceive. And with that, I thank you.